Hi, this is Stevie. Would you like to learn a way to add a little more texture to your watercolor paintings? You may not want to do this all the time, but it's a nice thing to know if you're painting something like flowers or mountains. I don't know about buildings. I guess it could be applied to buildings too, but it's a nice thing to learn. I have a product here it's made by Golden, and it's called Light Molding Paste. It's actually an acrylic texture medium, and it's used with acrylic painting, but it can be used with watercolor as well. I have a piece of paper here. It's Arches 140-pound cold press, and I quickly sketched a picture of a generic sunflower just to demonstrate this for you. And then I have an old brush. This is one of my old acrylic brushes. I don't even recognize the brand. And it's a long handle brush, which I don't use for watercolor, but it'll work just to put this medium on. I would say don't use a good brush. I like using a round brush for flowers, but if you're going to use a brush, make sure it's an old brush, because when you clean it out, you may not get all the product out of the brush, and you don't want to ruin your good brushes. So you probably know anytime you're dealing with an acrylic product, right after you use the brush, you need to get it in water and keep it wet, and then rinse it out with soap and water when you're finished. Okay, so anyway, I've got this sketch of the sunflower and a damp brush because I was washing this brush off. So it's just damp. I didn't dip it in water just now or anything. So all I'm going to do is pick up some of this medium and start applying it. I'll start in the center, and I'm kind of dabbing it around the center because I want the texture in the center. You know how the centers of sunflowers have seeds growing, and there's usually a lot of texture in the center of the flowers. That's one of the characteristics of sunflowers. So I'm just carefully picking up some of the molding paste and dabbing it on. Okay, then once I have the center finished, then I can move on. If you feel like your brush needs to be wetter, that's fine. Rinse it off. Then I would say put your brush in water and then wipe it with a paper towel to get most of the water out. Just leave it damp. Then starting, well, you could go either way. You could start here, which is normally the way I start a flower, but I think I'm going to want the texture more up at the tips. So I'm going to load my brush, and this is a size 10, whatever brand it is, brush. Anyway, load my brush with the texture, and then starting at the top, at the tip of each petal, think about the shape of the petal and how you make that shape when you're painting normally. And just go ahead and pull it down toward the center of the flower. Can you see that? See that texture that it makes? And then just continue on around. So there'll be maybe a little more texture at the tip and less as you get toward that center part of the flower. If you want a little more texture on the tip, just add more of the molding paste. And I learned this technique many years ago, probably 30 or more years ago, from an artist in Oregon by the name of Susan Shiwi. Some of you artists that have been doing watercolor for a long time may recognize that name, Susan Shiwi. Sue is very popular in the Pacific Northwest, has been for 50 years. She has taught both watercolor and acrylic. She has written many books on watercolor and acrylic painting, and they're probably still available online. Sue is also a book publisher, but she's close to 80 years old now, and I think she's probably closing that business down. So you might find some new books, but more likely they'd be used on eBay or maybe on Amazon or other places like that. Anyway, her books are all delightful, and if you're a beginner painter especially, they're easy to follow. So anyway, I learned this technique from her, and she uses it in both watercolor and acrylic painting. a lot of acrylic artists use this. I can feel this paint starting to drag because it's been a while since I put my brush in water. So I'm going to finish this petal and then stop and wipe my brush off, rinse it in some water, just the water on my table, rinse it, wipe it again with my brush, and then keep going. But at the end, when I finish this video, I'll go and use soap and water to clean this brush. So this time I'm just kind of pulling it out from the center because it's easier on these lower petals to do that. And that looks okay. Or you can turn your paper around. What an idea, huh? Can always do that. So it's just like painting, really. That's all you're doing is adding the texture to it with brush strokes. I'll tell you, I tried this with a palette knife earlier, but it got too much on. It was way too much product on here, and it would have been a big blobby mess. So then I did it with this, and I like this much better. And you can control the brush a lot better than you can a palette knife. Susan Shiwi used to sell a line of paints as well, both watercolor and acrylic, and they're good paints if you have some or can find them. I don't know if they're being manufactured anymore. They were being made by Martin F. Weber Company. That's the same company that makes the Bob Ross products, but I don't know if they're still doing that or not. But I think I still have some of my old Susan Shiwi paints. Okay, now down to the stem. You could choose to just do the flower, and maybe you'd want your flower to pop out, but not the leaves. That's fine. You could do that. Getting a little more texture there. Or you could put texture on the whole thing. And I'm going to do that just to show you. I'm going to get some on the stem. A little bit, just so that it doesn't look disconnected from the flower. And I just have this one size brush that I'm using, so I have to be careful in these skinny areas. It wouldn't be a disaster if I went outside the lines. People might not even notice, but I'm going to try to be fairly neat about it. It will take this about 2 hours to dry. So what I'm doing this video in two parts. I'm going to let it dry overnight, and then I'll come back and do part 2 of this video tomorrow. So you'll be able to see it once it dries up. So for the leaf, you could either, as far as the strokes go, you could just follow the leaf this way, or you could create more of the texture of the leaves by pulling the strokes in toward the center, the way that you might paint leaves. Either one is fine. I don't know. I think I'm going to go the other way. I'm just going to go like this and do it. And one more leaf to go. My brush is getting dry again, but I think I can finish this up. I can see the product is starting to drag a little bit on the paper. That's how I know my brush is getting dry. Okay, there we go. So here's what it looks like. I'll put it up to the camera so you can see it. Can you see all that texture? I'll move it so you can see it in the different light. Okay, so I'm just going to let that sit here and dry overnight. Then tomorrow I'll come back and finish up the video and put everything together. So I do want to talk about putting this product away. First, I'm going to clean my brush and put it in some water. Just keep it wet, and then that'll hold it until I can go get to the sink and use soap and water. But as far as storing this product, this molding paste, what I do, I live in Arizona, so it's hot and dry here. So I spritz the product first, just a little bit, and then I have a piece of, this is saran wrap. I don't have the box here anymore, but in the UK you call it cling film, but it's saran wrap. So what I do is I set it down, kind of just hold it tight against the sides, and then put the lid on. And it may not seem like much, but that makes a big difference, and it makes it stay moist longer, because This product was $16 at Michael's today, although I had a 30% off coupon, so that was really good. But at that price, I don't want it drying out too fast, and I don't use it that often, but there you have it. So I hope you come back for the second part of this video where you'll see me actually paint the flower and see what happens to the texture. And if you like this kind of technique, please leave a message in a note in the comments and let me know. But I appreciate your watching. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for part 2. Okay, I'm back for part 2 of my video to show you how it's going to look once I put paint on over the molding paste. So I'm just going to start the way I normally would. I'm going to use, let's see, maybe a number 8. Just a number 8. This is my Princeton Velvet Touch. It's a synthetic bristle round brush. So I'm just going to use that. And as I always do, I'm just going to flick a little bit of water on the paper to get started. And then I think I'll start with the center first. And then you can get an idea of what that's going to look like. And of course, it's going to be a little different. It'll look a little different than it would just painting on paper if you're painting over this product, because it won't bleed like the paper will. But I'll just do my best here to demonstrate this. So far, so good. And then I'll pick up a little bit of yellow to start my petals. And I don't mind that some of that color, I don't mind that some of the color from the center, that's quinacridone burnt orange. I kind of like that look when it bleeds up into the sunflower color, so I actually purposely do that. I don't mind that at all. And I'm not being that careful, as you can see. A little bit too much water on my brush. And I'm recording this as I'm painting, and it's really hard to talk and paint, so forgive me if I stop talking for a minute. I guess my brain has to process everything. And hopefully you can see, I'll stop here in a minute so you can get a closer look. I'll hold it up to the camera closer. But hopefully you can get a look at how you can see the texture, how much texture there is from that product that I put on the paper. And I'll bend or turn the paper a little bit so hopefully you can see that in the light. Do you see that texture? Get it up close here. I like the look of that. I'm going to go back in on the center and just darken part of it here a little bit to show that there's maybe some light coming from the upper right. And I like to make it a little more colorful, so I'm going to drop in some of my, the first color, the first yellow I put on was Permanent Yellow Medium, I believe, and now this is Permanent Yellow Deep. And these are, I believe, Winsor Newton colors. I use Winsor Newton paints and Daniel Smith paints, and that's pretty much it. I might have a couple of Holbein colors, but I tend to stick with Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith. I really like their paints. Okay, so now that I added another color, you can really see the ridges in the flowers, and I like that look. It looks really nice. And before that all dries, I'm going to get a little bit of background color in there. And I'm just going to use a little bit of a mix of some cobalt blue and some manganese. Manganese is just a little bit lighter and greener than cobalt blue. And I like to mix those two for sky color. And just going to get something in there, just so it doesn't look so bare. I think I just got my arm in the paint. And I don't want to get, if I get right up next to those petals, it's going to bleed, as you can see. And also, I have to spritz my water, my paper, because I'm going to end up with little dots if I don't keep that wet. And again, here in Arizona, that's always a challenge to keep your paper wet when you're trying to do wet into wet, just because everything dries so fast, and especially with a surface this small, it dries really quickly. So that's a constant challenge. I guess I didn't have to do this much of a background, but oh well. And you can see that that yellow color bleeds out into the background. I don't care about that. I can go back later on. If that really bothered me, I could go back later on and add more blue right up against the yellow petals, and that would take care of that. And this is just really a quick little demo. So one thing I'm going to do here is make sure that I don't have hard edges. I don't know that I'm going to take that background color all the way down just for the sake of time. So what I'm going to do is just blend out my color to nothing. I'm just going to use water to blend it out so that I don't have any hard edges there. And later on, if I want to go back and add more background, I can. That's just a nice little thing to know. Just avoid the hard edges. I kind of like how that's all blending out. The yellow is bleeding into the blue. I like how that looks. Okay, down to my stem. And what I'm going to do on the stem, I don't think it's wet on the stem, which is okay. But I like to repeat my colors. So I used the yellow in the petals, and I'm going to use it again in the leaves and the stem. So I just added some in different spots there. And I'm going to pick up some sap green and mix it with a little bit of that Quin burnt orange, which is the color used in the center of the flower. And I just kind of randomly put this in. I don't want to cover up all that yellow here. So I'm going to pretend there's a shadow side and a sunny side to this leaf. Maybe do something like this. And it's going, that green is going to spread because the paper's wet, which is fine. And come over here and do the same on this side. Same idea. Get some darker green, say on the bottom of the leaf. And maybe right there. And then leave some of it, just the yellow color, to indicate a highlight. And there again, I've got some bleeding going on, and I really like it. If that bothers you, then let everything dry before you go back in and start the background. Probably what I'll do is go in and finish the background. I'm not going to do that here on camera just for sake of time, but I would go back in and finish the background, and when I do, then I would take my cobalt blue and get it right up against the petals, and it won't get rid of the yellow entirely, and I don't really want it to, but it will. One thing I need is more dark against light. So if my flower is light, I need to get some darker blue against it to make it stand out. And that's one thing that I'll do when I get some darker blue in there. I could even go in and add a little bit of my cobalt, I think this is called cobalt blue violet. That's a nice color too, and I could mix that with my cobalt blue to get a nice dark color. I'll show you just as a sample. I don't know if it's going to run into the flower. Probably is. But I just wanted you to see that color, and as soon as you start to get some dark color up against that light, it defines the petals more, the flower petals more. So I'm probably going to get a bloom there because my paper was still wet. I'll deal with that later. That really isn't what I wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you how the texture on the leaves and the petals looks after I added the molding paste. And I want to show you one other thing. In my demo, when I put the molding paste on, I used a brush, just a watercolor brush to put on the molding paste. Well, I decided to try doing it with a little palette knife. I have a little palette knife that I use for different things here, just a tiny one. So I tried to put, I tried to do it with that, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of how it's a lot of texture. If you like that much texture, well, have at it. But oh my goodness, it's so, I don't know if you can tell how thick that is. It even kind of bent the paper a little bit. Might look okay once it's all painted, but I don't know. And I'll just add a little yellow to some of these petals. My yellow's kind of dirty. But just to let you see how it looks, it is much, there's much more dimension to it than the first one I did with the brush. So if you like the palette knife and think you can control it, well, great. I don't know how much I like that, but it does give a lot of dimension to the sketch. And even when you get a background color in there, you'd still have a lot of dimension to the petals and the leaves. But you just need to make sure you let it wait long enough to dry, because that's pretty thick. So I did this yesterday, so it's had plenty of time to dry. Okay, so there you have it. My bloom is starting on in that area where I was adding the dark, but that can all be fixed at this point too. So here's another tip. When you've got things close in value like this, you will get a lot more drama in the painting if you go much darker, say with the background. And not in every spot. For example, around in here, where you want to call attention to your petals is where you want to get a lot of dark. So what I could do is get up right close to these petals and get some really dark color in there, like my mix of the cobalt, blue violet, and cobalt. Just get it really dark. And then as you, I'll try to show you here, even though I know this is not dry yet. But get your dark color right up next to the petal. Then rinse your brush and get most of the water out of it. And then you can pull that color out. So the idea is it's dark right up next to your petals, which would be where you want to direct the eye. But as you move away from the petals, the color gets lighter. And that helps to keep the eye focused on the flower rather than having the eye wander off the page. So these things are all fixable. I don't think I even finished this leaf here. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I think you can see, I can certainly feel it. Hopefully you can see that the texture in this flower. And it's just a nice handy thing to know about in case you want to try that out and have some fun with it. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching. So here's my finished piece. I added a lot more darks, as you can see, and fixed up the background a bit.